Hi everyone, welcome to GRATITUESDAY. My name is Raina and I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. Today we're going to be talking about self-care in recovery. And this article is called How to Practice Self-Care in Recovery, Advice from a Therapist. And it is written by Haley Schaefer and Heidi Mowad. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But this is a really great article because it breaks everything down for you, so you can see like the different types of self-care and how they directly relate to recovery. So it starts out by saying for people in recovery, self-care is necessary to allow their bodies, minds, and spirits to heal from the effects of substance abuse. This can require significant lifestyle changes that support a sober way of life. Some of these changes are basic forms of self-care, like improving sleep and addressing health problems. Others are recovery-specific activities, like attending 12-step meetings and starting therapy. So we're going to start out by talking about what is self-care. There are a lot of mixed messages about what the term self-care means and what actually counts as self-care. According to the World Health Organization, self-care involves activities that enhance health, prevent disease, maintain health, and cope with illness and disability. From this framework, self-care is an activity that provides net benefits to your physical or mental health. Doing a cost-benefit analysis is a great way to determine whether an activity counts as real self-care. For example, going to the gym costs you time, energy, and possibly a monthly fee, but could also benefit you by keeping you healthy, lowering stress, and boosting your energy, mood, or confidence. The most effective types of self-care are low cost and high benefit and don't cause other risks or consequences that might endanger your health in other ways. And that's true. I know a lot of times when we talk about self-care, we think of it more as, going to get our hair done or, going to a spa, like all these things. But self-care really is, doesn't cost you anything. There's a lot of different things that you can do for self-care without having to spend a lot of money. Because let's be honest, when we come into recovery, we're not exactly like have the most money. Some of us weren't working or, haven't had a job in years. You know what I mean? We're so used to spending all our money on drugs and alcohol that we don't have a lot of money to spare when we come into recovery. Because we're rebuilding, and that self-care is part of rebuilding. So we're going to talk about the different types of self-care that you can do that are, very low cost or no cost at all. So let's see why self-care is important for recovery. People who are in recovery from an addiction face many stressors. Addiction-specific stressors include the discomfort of drug or alcohol withdrawal and strong cravings. Simultaneously, many in recovery have stress from parts of their lives that were neglected during their addiction, including damaged careers and relationships. Combined, these factors create a lot of added stress, which can be counteracted with an effective self-care routine. Like I said, we come into recovery with very little. Not only are we, broken and, stressed and worried about all these things, but it affected other things in our lives, like our relationships, our jobs, so many different things, and we tend to feel the weight of all of that, like we have to fix it right away, and it can be very overwhelming. So we have to do things to help us stay, lower the stress level, make things more manageable. Since stress is one of the most common triggers for relapse, self-care is an essential part of success in addiction recovery. Self-care in recovery can involve improving sleeping, nutrition, and work-life balance, or making more time for regular exercise, meditation, or social interaction. Prioritizing self-care not only helps individuals manage stress, but also fosters overall well-being, which is crucial for maintaining a substance-free lifestyle. So it is a big priority. We have to take care of ourselves first before we can do anything else. If we're not taking care of ourselves, then it's very hard for us to, try and work a job or, improve those relationships. Because if we're not working on improving ourselves, we're not going to be able to work on improving anything else. So it's talking about, can self-care prevent relapse? According to research, at least 50% of people who can get clean or sober end up relapsing. Consistent self-care is a protective factor that decreases the risk of toxic stress, mental illnesses, and addictive disorders. Effective self-care can also improve a person's ability to regulate emotions and resist urges. Because each of these factors is linked to a higher risk of addiction relapse, it's reasonable to conclude that self-care significantly lowers the risk of relapse for people in recovery from an addiction. I completely agree with that. We are dealing with so many different things, and it's very easy to just throw our hands up and be done with it and go back to using. It takes a little bit of work to maintain that sobriety and to continue with recovery, which is an ongoing process. So there are certain things that we have to change. There are coping mechanisms that we have to develop to be able to continue in recovery and be successful in it without a relapse. And self-care is one of those things, because if we're taking care of ourselves, we start to realize that the drugs and alcohol would be the complete opposite of taking care of ourselves. So we want to stay and maintain that self-care in recovery to help us, fight those urges and resist going back to using. So now we're going to talk about the types of self-care. Because self-care has become a pretty generic umbrella term, it can help to have some more specific examples of the various types of self-care and what it looks like in practice. This way you can have some ideas for how to improve your self-care and what kinds of activities to consider adding to your routine. It takes time and a bit of trial and error to create a self-care routine that works for your recovery needs. So here are 7 different kinds of self-care for addiction recovery. The first one is practical self-care. Practical self-care is just what it sounds like, practical ways to meet your basic needs and fulfill your most pressing responsibilities. For example, things you do to make your daily life a little less chaotic probably count as practical self-care, and so do all of the basic chores around your house. Managing your budget and finances also goes under practical self-care, since life would get pretty quickly unmanageable if you neglected these tasks. So these are just basic life skills that we're talking about. Like it said, like managing a budget, keeping up with chores, something as simple as like making your bed, just any little thing in your life that you can do to help reduce the chaos that we are so great at creating is going to help you significantly. Like I know for myself, before my, addiction with drugs and alcohol took off to a point where, I didn't have money for anything else except that, I would spend money as part of my addiction, go shopping and like overbuy stuff. I would like just get stuff for the house or the kids that we did not need. And then I'd end up with a crazy credit card bill, and I'm trying to balance finances. So it's things like that that create chaos in our lives. So, if we reduce those things and figure out how to manage them better, it's going to make a big difference in helping us through the day-to-day life, because that's really where things go. If we get to start small, we don't want to start out in this big production and all of a sudden, like, it's too much. It gets very overwhelming. So it's good to start with the small things in our lives that we can kind of start to manage and get under control to help us build upon when things either get crazy or, unexpected situations come up. Then we can kind of focus on how to get through them without having to worry about all the basic stuff in our lives. So here are some examples of practical self-care to try during addiction recovery. You can try keeping a calendar of scheduled therapy, recovery, and self-help meetings. Keeping a calendar, period, is a great idea. I know for myself, when I open my phone, my calendar is the first thing there. I have to make sure that no matter what I'm doing, it is in that calendar or it's not going to happen. Like I know I come to work the same hours every day, but I still put it in my phone. So that way it's in my calendar. And if I'm scheduling something else, I can refer to it. I can add it in. I can take it out. It just makes things so much easier for me to make sure that I am doing what I need to, attending the things I need to. And it says the self-help meetings. I'll schedule in my phone if someone's celebrating a recovery, if they're celebrating a year clean or whatever the case may be, so that way I can be aware of it and hopefully be able to attend. So it's important to keep a calendar of, any scheduled events, doctor's appointments especially, because I know, like I said, if I don't put it in my phone, I'm going to forget about it and I'm going to miss the appointment. So it's just doing that little thing, whether you do it on your phone, if you want to write it down, whatever helps you, it really goes a long way. The next one's cleaning up your space and throwing away drugs, alcohol, and paraphernalia. This is an important one because many of us know that, 6 months down the line, we're going through something and we find some sort of paraphernalia can be very triggering to the point that it could cause relapse. So it's a really good idea to kind of go through your things and, get rid of all of those things that may be a trigger. Making a weekly list of specific errands, tasks, and chores you have to get done. Again, writing things down, making a to-do list. Like in my house, I have a chalkboard with all these pretty colored chalk pens, and that's where things get written down that need to be done in the house, or a grocery list, or whatever the case may be. So we can keep track of them, see what still needs to be done, see what we can cross off the list. It just makes things so much more manageable. Next one says, each week, making a goal to begin addressing one neglected area of life. For example, unpaid debts or bills, tidying a messy house, getting insurance quotes, etc. Again, it talks about making one goal per week. It's not about trying to get all of these things done all at once. It's breaking it down into manageable tasks. Like for myself, I had to make sure that insurance. My daughter has a car under my name. I had to make sure the insurance was good on that. I had to make sure the insurance was good on my car. And it's like, okay, it's time to go through inspection. That's going to be my goal for the week, getting the car through inspection. Doesn't sound like that much, but when you make sure that you're doing these things once a week, twice a week, if you choose to, it makes it easier and more manageable. And the last one says, checking your accounts throughout the week to monitor your spending. I do this every day now. I have an app on my computer, and every day I put in anything that I might have spent. I deduct the bills out. I keep track of where the money is because, like I said, for me, spending money was an issue. So now I make sure that I am allotting enough money to make sure that, the electric's paid, the gas is paid, all these different things before I go spending money on something I may just want. It's a good way to lower your stress, definitely, and make sure things are getting taken care of the way they should be. So the next one we're going to talk about is physical self-care. Physical self-care involves all the healthy choices and routines that keep you physically strong and healthy. This includes your diet, sleep, and exercise habits, as well as anything you need to do to manage chronic illnesses, injuries, or infections. Physical self-care also involves choices and routines that help your body feel and function better, like stretching, trying to be less sedentary, or blocking out blue light to improve your sleep. That blue light one seems to come up a lot. And I know for me, that's a big downfall. I'm on my phone and watching TV at the same time at night. It doesn't help with my sleep pattern. It's something that I still need to work on. But I'm aware of it. So I have to practice working on it. So, that's one of my goals. I have a tendency to be on my phone watching TV and fall asleep on the couch and never going to bed. So now I try to make sure that I'm aware of that. I put away the phone, I turn off the TV, and I go to bed. Not always successful, but, I put in the practice to try and do it to continue. These are some examples of self-care to try during addiction recovery. The first one is making an appointment with a doctor or medical professional to consult about the safest way to detox from a substance. Very, very important. There are certain things, alcohol, benzos, that you do not want to detox on your own. They can cause a lot of health problems, possibly death. It's something that you want to do under a medical professional's supervision, as well as any other like substance that's going to cause withdrawal. It makes the process so much easier to handle than trying to do it yourself. And it's a safer way to do it than trying to do it yourself. And if you have any questions about that, where you can go, what might be a good route for you, please give us a call. We can help you with that. The next one is taking time off when necessary to seek treatment or medical stabilization during the detox and withdrawal process. Yeah, we don't want to try and go to work while detoxing. The two, are very hard to manage. I do know some people that have been able to do it, and I don't know how. That was not my story. But it's good to take the time to focus on that. Keeping a written log of physical withdrawal symptoms discussed with your treatment providers as scheduled follow-up appointments. If you are still struggling with withdrawal symptoms after a detox or rehab, it is very important that you maintain a relationship with a doctor to help you with that. I myself suffered from post-acute withdrawal very bad. I had symptoms of withdrawal for months. So I had to talk with the doctor and find out the best way to manage that so that the uncomfortableness and the stress of it didn't send me back to using. So another one is drinking more water and eating cleaner, unprocessed foods to help with the detox. This is very hard, but it can make things a lot better, especially drinking water, and that's really important. And then taking any prescribed addiction medication and consulting closely with your prescriber before changing or stopping your medicine. And that goes for any medication. A lot of us, for many years, we self-medicated. So when you're coming into recovery, it's important to make sure that you are keeping a line of communication open with any doctors about your medications, if there's side effects, if you're ready to stop taking it and want to be weaned off of a medication. Just don't do those things on your own. Make sure you consult a doctor and do it the correct way, because a lot of times, not even necessarily like MATs, like Suboxone or Methadone. Those you especially want to make sure that you are consulting the doctor about. But even other medications that you may be taking, antidepressants, so many different things that can cause withdrawal symptoms. Make sure you're talking to a therapist or a doctor about, coming off of those, if you should come off of them. It's very important to keep that line of communication open, because even for things like that, you start to feel uncomfortable. It might, set that little bulb off, like, oh, I know how to fix this by using. And we want to try to avoid self-medicating ourselves. So the next one is emotional self-care. Emotional self-care involves all the things you do to lower stress and anxiety, improve your mood, and become more emotionally stable. Trying hard to avoid or repress difficult emotions usually doesn't count as emotional self-care, since these denial and distraction tactics usually only work in short term. Real emotional self-care helps you process through and address emotional issues and inner conflicts, providing more lasting benefits to your mood and mindset. Suppressing emotions is one of the worst things you can do in recovery. If you find it hard to talk to somebody about what's going on with you, there are services out there where you can dial 988 and a complete anonymous stranger on the other end of the phone will help you. You can call us and we will help you. But you also want to get to the point where you have people that you can talk to about what's going on, about processing your emotions instead of pushing them down. Because a lot of us do that when we use in order to not feel. And we continue to use because of that. So in recovery, you have all these emotions that come up and you have to learn how to manage them. It's important to talk about them with your significant other, with your family, with a friend, whatever the case may be. Communication about how you're feeling is very, very important. So we're going to talk about some examples of emotional self-care. Using mindfulness to practice observing negative thoughts without getting overly involved with them. Don't dwell, basically. You have a negative thought, you have a negative feeling, notice it, see where it's coming from, but don't stay in it. You know, once you start staying in it, then that self-pity comes in, and like that really just, that leads us back to, you know, bad things. Tracking your mood and emotions with a daily log or app such as Reframe. That's a great idea. I was just talking to somebody about, you know, journaling. You know, how you're feeling that day, write down how you're feeling that day, write down why you might be feeling that way. You know, so when it comes up again, you have something to reference. They can say, okay, the last time I felt like this is what was going on in my life. Let me see what's happening now. There, you might discover patterns in the different things that you're feeling or thinking. And like I always tell everybody, like if you're struggling with overthinking or obsessive thoughts, like whatever the case may be, journal it, write it down, put it on a piece of paper, give it its own life, so that way it's not consuming your life. Practicing urge surfing to track urges and cravings without acting on them. Again, making notes, journaling. You know, did you see something that triggered you today? Write down what that trigger was. And then you know, okay, next time this happens, I need to avoid this. You know, right, like drug dreams are a big one. We wake up from them, we get scared of a relapse, we get scared that now it's going to make us want to go use. You know, write those things down. Another one is attending group therapy sessions or online support groups to learn new ways to cope with stress and difficult emotions. Always great. 12-step meetings. I go to 12-step meetings. It's a great way to get support from other people who are, you know, in recovery and going through the same things you are. Therapy, whether it's group therapy, if it's individual, all great. Outpatient programs, mental health group therapy, all of these things they're so beneficial on helping to regulate emotional issues and self-care. Practicing self-compassion by talking to yourself in a kinder way and interrupting self-critical thoughts that make you feel bad about yourself. This is a hard one to do. You know, for so long, we have just thought of ourselves as less than. So I know for me personally, when I got to recovery, I was still in that mindset. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. There's all these negative things that I had to work at and practice to flip, like from the positive or from the negative to the positive. And one of those things is practicing self-care, you know, taking care of myself, feeling better about myself. Next one is journaling about recovery and how an addiction-free life benefits you. Oh, how it benefits you. Again, like I said about the other ones, journaling, you know, taking notes, you know, being aware of what's going on around you and inside of you, and going back and looking at those things. You know, I go back and I look at some things that I wrote when I first came home from treatment, and I'm like, wow, I was in a really dark place still, and it makes me grateful for where I am today. So that can be a great motivator when you're feeling bad about yourself and you just feel like maybe you're not doing enough, maybe you aren't giving enough, whatever the case may be, to go back and look at where you were, you know, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and compare yourself to that, because you're going to see the growth from doing that. So the next one is mental self-care. While some people lump emotional and mental self-care together, they could be understood as slightly different types of self-care. While emotional self-care helps you process and deal with your feelings, mental self-care focuses on stimulating your mind in ways that promote learning and growth. This includes things you do to keep your mind sharp, reduce brain fog, and expand your knowledge, skills, or perspective on things. This is really important. I am somebody who suffers from brain fog. I have to do certain things to make sure that I stay on task, that I am, you know, paying attention when it's important. You know, we have a lot of trainings that we do, you know, and I have to find ways, because I have ADHD, so I have to find ways to make sure that I stay focused and that my brain is working to the best of its ability. So Let's look at some examples of mental self-care. The first one is listening to a recovery podcast that broadens your perspective or understanding of your addiction, triggers, and patterns. These are great. We play them here in our living room just to keep that mindset of recovery going on, to hear different stories, because you never know where your help's going to come from. You might watch something and not be able to identify with it at all and think it's not helpful, but then you might see something else that is going to be greatly beneficial to you. You might not connect with everything, but you'll connect with something. And it's good to hear those different perspectives. So attending a workshop, lecture, or seminar to learn more about the way addiction affects your brain and how to promote healing. Like I said, we do a lot of those different trainings and workshops. We want to keep up on things to help you better, so that we're more aware of new trending things that will help. Self-care, like I said, that's a big one. Our groups here, you can learn so many different things from. So using brain games like puzzles, riddles, Sudoku, or word searches to help aid your brain's healing process. My boyfriend makes fun of me because I play Candy Crush a lot, but it actually helps me focus. It's a puzzle game. And for me, that's one thing that helps me make sure that I'm on top of things. What's the next one? Practicing hyper-focusing on a single task by reducing distractions and setting a timer for focus blocks of work. Reducing distractions is a great way, especially if you're someone like me who can't pay attention to there's too much going on, I just check out. So you want to eliminate those distractions. If the TV is too loud, if there's people talking, close the door, anything that can kind of help you focus on what you're, trying to do in that moment. It also says about subscribing to Substack to read recovery-related articles and get tips from addiction experts, therapists, and others in recovery. Again, this is something that we do a lot. We go online, we look at different websites, find different articles. That's where we get the ones that we bring here to you to do these groups with. So you can always do those things on your own, do your own research. It's important to be able to, find different things that are going to help you. So the next one is spiritual self-care. And spiritual self-care involves any activity that helps you feel more connected to your spiritual beliefs, closer to God or the universe, or nurtures your soul or spirit. For some, spiritual self-care stems from religion and involves traditional forms of worship, prayer, religious texts, and services. For others, spiritual self-care has more to do with nature, how they treat others, or ways they stand up for what they believe in. Spiritual self-care is really important. And this is one, for myself personally, that I did not really have prior coming to recovery. I had to do some work and find out what worked for me spiritually. And for a lot of people, they come in with some sort of faith, whether it be any type of religion or any type of practice. So you kind of had an idea of what you believe in. If you're someone like me who was really unsure, being in recovery and 12-step meetings and doing some research really helped me to find and hone in on what worked for me spiritually, because that was one of the things that I was lacking. And being able to find something spiritual to fill all that emptiness inside once I got clean was really important, but it was also a challenge. So I do recommend, if you don't have something, to think about it, talk to other people about what they believe in and see what works for you, and try different things. You might start to like something and then all of a sudden you're like, maybe that's not going to work. And that's okay. You can move on to something else and try other things. That's what's really important about your recovery, is finding out what works for you. So some examples are practicing Tai Chi or meditation to feel more connected to the energy in and around your body. Meditation's a big one. And it doesn't have to be the classic close your eyes, silence, hum or whatever you may do. Like for me, meditation is driving, blasting the music, and drowning out the thoughts. It allows me to like just clear my head. Making time to volunteer, help people who are earlier in the process of addiction recovery. That's really important. Giving back. Being someone in a 12-step fellowship, that is one of our biggest things. You can't keep what we have. We can only keep what we have by giving it away. And that's what we do here at the center. We're in recovery and we want to give back to others. Reading a book on spirituality to see if any ideas or recommendations that resonate with you. You can attend church, temple, or other religious ceremonies to learn, explore, or connect more deeply with your faith. Both of those things. Doing some research, seeing what works for you. Repeating prayers or recovery mantras each morning or throughout your day to help you stay focused on recovery goals. A lot of us in recovery will, start saying that serenity prayer whenever we feel like we need it. And then attending spiritual group meetings or Bible studies with peers you connect with. Again, find what works for you. Talk to people, see what, they're doing and what connects them to something spiritual. So number 6 is social self-care. Humans are instinctively social animals, which is why social self-care earns its own spot on this list. Social self-care is any action, choice, or activity that helps you meet your needs for connection, intimacy, and social stimulation. Things that help you build, foster, maintain important relationships with close friends and family also count as social self-care. Communication, boundary setting, and saying no can also count as social self-care, since these are often necessary to preserve positive relationships with others. Here are some examples of social self-care to try during recovery. So let me just start out by saying social self-care is so important. For so long, we have isolated, and shut the world out. And, in recovery, that is not the way to go. You want to make sure that you have a group of people to support you and help you along the way. So you can designate a regular sober date night with partners, friends, or family to rebuild relationships that became strained or distant during active addiction. Yeah, just once a week, plan a night, like I try and plan little things with my kids. Like we're going to do a barbecue on Monday for the holiday, get all the kids together. Whatever the case may be, like doing dinner once a week. I know before COVID, one of the groups that I would attend on Friday night, a bunch of us would go to the diner afterwards. It's like, the recovery after recovery. It's a great way to meet people and get involved. So writing a letter to estranged friends or family members to apologize or make amends for things you did or didn't do while you were using. Again, this is, 12 steps. It's right in there, making your amends. You want to make sure that you're in a good place to do that. So the amend comes off as genuine and thought out and, is not going to cause any additional harm, but it is a good way to reconnect with people. Cutting ties or contact with people who are still actively using drugs or alcohol and making sober friends. People, places, and things. You can't go hang out at the drug dealer's house anymore because you're not going to stay clean by doing that. People that are still using, I had a little bit of a hard time like cutting ties with like certain groups of friends, even though they were, they drink on the weekend. I can't drink on the weekend. So it's things like that you want to avoid. Attending regular 12-step or recovery meetings to connect with other people who are in recovery for more social support. Extremely important. For me personally, 12-step saved me. It really did. It gave me a purpose. It gave me a group of people who are like family, who I can call on at any time that I need some sort of help, and that can rely on me for the same. And then leaving the house more often to avoid long stretches of social isolation. Again, isolation is not the way to go in recovery. And that's not to say that you can't stay home for the day and just enjoy a day to yourself. That can be self-care. You just don't want to do that for an extended period of time or stop answering the phone. Like those types of things are going to have you slipping back into patterns that aren't good for recovery. And then the last one we're going to talk about is professional self-care. Professional self-care involves all the ways you make your career, job, or work life more rewarding and fulfilling, as well as things you do to mitigate work-related stress. For example, addressing workplace conflicts or advocating for policy changes that would make your job less stressful all count as professional self-care. Setting better boundaries at work and aiming for a better work-life balance are also important forms of professional self-care. This can be a struggle for a lot of us, depending on your line of profession. Whether you might work in a factory where speaking up about procedure is going to get you looked at like, no, go back to work. So you have to judge when and where things are appropriate. But you also don't want to keep putting yourself in a position where your life is miserable. And I can say personally, I was in a job field that, kept me from doing things with my kids when they were little, caused me a great deal of stress to the point where I was drinking every night just to fall asleep and dreading waking up and going to work. Those kinds of things, you don't want to put yourself in those kinds of positions because it'll give you a great excuse to go back to using. So consider taking FMLA or paid time off from work to complete an inpatient rehab, detox, or intensive outpatient addiction treatment program. A lot of people come to us and say, I can't go away, I have to work. There are things set in place for us these days where jobs are going to work with you, that you are covered under the Disability Act for certain, like for treatment and different things. So you have to prioritize that treatment and that detox so that you can continue in your job. Because if you are trying to keep the job instead of getting rid of the addiction, the active addiction, it's not going to work. Seeking help from a service that helps people in recovery or with criminal records find jobs or receive additional vocational training or support. You can always call us for that. We get a job listing of jobs every week. We have resources for different places where you can get certified for forklift driving, like many different resources here for that type of thing. Setting better boundaries at work to reduce work-related stress, like not checking work emails after hours, taking regular breaks, and not taking on extra work. This is something that I had to work at. I know for myself, unless I am on call, I separate myself from my work when I leave. Because if I'm keeping up with my work at home, I'm neglecting what's going on at home. And that's not fair, to the people that I live with or the people that I care about if I'm always obsessed with what's going on at my job. So I try and keep those things separate because for a long time I didn't, and all that negativity flooded into my life and affected my family. Requesting that your treatment provider complete ADA paperwork for any accommodations you need at school or work. And taking one-on-one with your supervisor to make a plan to return to work gradually if you had taken time off in early recovery. This is something I did. I am a hairdresser by trade, and I let them know, like, I need to go to treatment. I didn't go back to work right away after I came home. I needed some time to readjust, to learn how to just function day to day without the drugs. But then eventually I said, listen, I'm ready to come back a couple days a week. And that's what I did, 2 days a week. And you know what I mean? And then I did a little bit more. So it's okay to ease your way back in. Don't overwhelm yourself. Because you start overwhelming yourself and 9 times out of 10, that's what's going to create that stress, and you just throwing your hands up and saying, forget it. And that's not what we want you to do. We want you to take these suggestions, the self-care, and try and take care of yourself as best to your ability. And as always, you are welcome to call us if you need help with any of that. If there's anything that we can do, we will. You can come into the office, even if it's just to speak with one of us, just to get some things off your chest. Whatever you need, we are here for you. So as always, thank you guys so much. And you guys have a great rest of your day.